Alright, I promised this a lot earlier, but last time it caused my internet to crash. And then it went out. And now I'm back. Go figure. Anyways. Alright. Basically, this video is going to continue on the last video, which is the aftermath of the Fedor signing with Strikeforce. I talked about some potential matchups that are good, weighed the pros and cons of, this versus the UFC deal. Now I'm going to talk about what this kind of means and, just generally comment on the aftermath of this. What it means is we got to put up with Fedor, or not Fedor, Dana White for the next while, telling us that Fedor doesn't want to fight top competition. This despite the fact that I think I've pretty well broken it down. In terms of strictly top competition, there is just as much outside of the UFC. There are more good fights in the UFC, but there are the same number of great fights. Do I agree with Fedor not signing with the UFC? No. Because, like anyone, I wanted him to fight in the UFC. I think this whole co-promotion business with M1 is complete bullshit. That being said, I can kind of understand it. You got to realize that Fedor doesn't really speak a lot of English, for one. And for two, you got to understand the Eastern European mindset and view on family. Vadim Finkelstein and the rest of M1 have become his family with the Red Devil sports team. It's very hard to go against that. That's why it was such a big deal when he left the Russian top team, when they were scamming him out of money. Now, I mean, at the same time, M1 is effectively doing some scamming of their own. Maybe he'll wake up to that. Maybe he'll wise up. Maybe someone will tell him. We'll see. I mean, you even see it. He still stands beside Alexander Emelianenko despite the fact that Alex has badmouthed him. And Alex has, in Fedor's own words, not really taken his training seriously. And hasn't really stayed on the straight and narrow path to success that has worked for Fedor. That's how much family means to the Eastern Europeans. It's the same with Sambo, which I brought up before. So that's a very hard roadblock to break. It is M1's fault. Dana White has no fault in the whole lack of signing of Fedor. He did for a while when he wasn't offering combat Sambo, because a lot of people, including myself, thought that they would waive the co-promotion if he could do Sambo. But when they did that, they still didn't sign. So obviously it's not Dana's fault at that point, and that's when we suspect Lorenzo got involved. That being said, the aftermath of this, with Lorenzo's Dana's complete and utter explosion, just continues to further the argument of why Dana is not really any good for the UFC and for MMA, at least from the standpoint of furthering it. You see, the Fertittas seem actually quite dedicated to getting it onwards. This is why Lorenzo's gone and done the deal with Crow Cop and got involved in the Fedor negotiations and so on. And, you gotta assume that, he's going to give Dana White the gag order at some times, and he has in the past. I think he's gonna do it again. And I think it's really just a matter of time before Dana gets dismissed by the Fertittas, because they do want to take it to that next level. You're giving people the ammunition they need to go with the UFC Bloodsport without even watching the fight, without watching the fights, which gives some info on their own and give some cons of their own to the public eye. But you're doing it for them, effectively. And don't mind the music in the background. My dad's listening to the stereo. I'm not going to get it turned off if you know anything about my relationship with my dad. What else did I say? So yeah, the reaction by Dana, not good. In the end, though, the man that is at fault for not having Fedor in the UFC is Vadim Finkelstein and the rest of the M1 guys. I don't so much put it on Fedor as much as, because I do believe Fedor knows what M1 wants him to know. If you think he knows anything further, you're somewhat crazy. Or if he finds it out, he's going to ask M1, and they're going to, this is the Eastern European mindset, that you're treating your management like family, and that can bite you in the ass. And I think it may at some point bite Fedor in the ass. Which brings up the question of, how would Fedor ever fight in the UFC? And it's going to be simple when Fedor splits from M1 management. And it's going to take something pretty drastic, but it could happen. I mean, he did with Russian top team. Then, I think you see Fedor in the UFC. I think, this has nothing to do with Fedor not wanting to fight the best. And I've said that a couple of times. And you know what? There are some very challenging fights for him outside of the UFC. And to say he's afraid of Brock Lesnar is somewhat insane, because he's fought bigger and potentially more skilled guys, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I want someone who continuously brings up how Brock would beat him to explain to me how it would happen, because none of you have managed to. Very, very few of you have even come anywhere near doing it. Your best argument so far has been, he's a beast, and anything can happen in MMA. you're basically solidifying that Fedor could beat Brock by saying anything can happen in MMA. So that in itself is not an argument. But anyways, I rambled on the subject. I probably won't do another Fedor video for a bit unless the day comes when he actually signs the UFC. I'll just break down his fight and see what there's to it. He's still the #1 heavyweight. He's still debatably a #1 pound-for-pound fighter. And you know what? I don't really know why the UFC keeps putting Anderson Silva as their main contestant. That because it doesn't make any sense when you look at who Anderson's lost to. I mean, it's been a while. Don't get me wrong. His losses to guys like Ryo Choden and Takase are well in the past. But at the same time, you'd think you'd go with GSP because GSP's only losses are to Matt Hughes and Matt Serra. Matt Hughes, who was at the time the #1 welterweight in the world, and Matt Serra, who has had this inflated, overhyped ability for a while. But anyways, that's all I have to say. And thanks for watching.